What happens when America's sweetheart of home design crosses paths with daytime? Television's most beloved host, and everything unravels in spectacular fashion. In this fictional dramatization, what unfolds is one of the most shocking celebrity confrontations ever imagined on live television. Joanna Gaines, long celebrated for her farmhouse chic empire and warm family-centric brand, completely loses her composure on the Drew Barrymore show. In a moment so intense that even the studio audience is left stunned, and Drew herself appears visibly shaken. This isn't your typical mildly awkward celebrity interview. This is a full-scale emotional eruption no one could have predicted. Asterisk, the setup seemed harmless enough. Joanna was scheduled for what should have been an easy promotional stop, chatting about her newest book, sharing design wisdom, and offering a few heartwarming anecdotes about life with Chip and the kids. Drew Barrymore, known for her radiant warmth and genuine curiosity, had prepared questions designed to spark a cozy, uplifting conversation about home, creativity, and the pursuit of dreams. But from the instant Joanna stepped onto the stage, a strange tension settled over the room. Her signature bright smile looked tight, almost brittle. Her posture was unusually stiff. And when Drew greeted her with her trademark enthusiasm, Joanna's reply landed with a noticeable chill. Asterisk, Joanna. Welcome back to the show, Drew said warmly as she settled into her seat. Every time I see what you and Chip have built with Magnolia, I'm just in awe. How do you make everything look so effortless and beautiful? Joanna shifted, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Well, Drew, I think people often confuse hard work with effortlessness, she replied. There's nothing effortless about building a brand from the ground up, while raising 5 children and maintaining the integrity of your vision. Most of the audience missed the subtle bite in her tone. But anyone familiar with Joanna's usual calm demeanor felt the shift immediately. Asterisk, Drew pushed forward gracefully. Absolutely. And that's what makes it so inspiring, she said, her smile unwavering. Speaking of inspiration, I loved the part in your book about creating spaces that tell stories. What story does your own home tell? Joanna's answer cut through the air with unexpected sharpness. My home tells the story of a family that values privacy, authenticity, and being left alone to live their lives without constant scrutiny or judgment, she said. It tells the story of people who believe not everything should be dissected and analyzed for public consumption. Asterisk, Drew's eyebrows lifted slightly, sensing the conversation had taken an unexpected turn. That's beautiful, Joanna. And speaking of stories, there have been some fascinating reports in the media lately about celebrity families and how they navigate fame. How do you and Chip handle the speculation about your personal lives? In that instant, everything changed. Joanna's entire demeanor shifted as if a switch had been flipped. Her jaw tightened, her eyes narrowed, and when she spoke, her voice carried a steel that no one in the studio had ever heard from the usually composed designer. Drew, are you seriously going to sit there and pretend you don't know exactly what you're doing right now? Are you going to act like this innocent? Question about speculation isn't a direct reference to the garbage your network has been pushing about my marriage for the past 6 months? The studio went completely silent. A pin could have dropped. Drew's face registered shock so immediate and raw that the cameramen weren't sure whether to keep rolling or cut away. But they filmed every 10-second, capturing a moment that felt like television history in the making. Asterisk, Joanna? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Drew stammered, visibly caught off guard. I was just trying to discuss how celebrity families deal with media attention in general. Joanna's voice cut through the room like a knife. Don't you dare gaslight me on your own show. Your producers called my team 3 times, specifically asking about the rumors that Chip and I are having problems. They pitched this interview as an opportunity for me to set the record straight about my family's private life. Drew went pale as the audience absorbed the gravity of the confrontation. Phones were drawn, whispers spread, and a few audience members even stood. Sensing the palpable tension, I swear to you, Joanna, I had no knowledge of any of those conversations, Drew said, her voice trembling. My team handles pre-interview coordination, and I specifically ask not to be briefed on controversial matters because I want my conversations with guests to be authentic and spontaneous. Joanna laughed, but there was no humor in it. Authentic and spontaneous. Is that what we're calling ambush journalism now, Drew? Because that is exactly what this is. You brought me here under false pretenses, trying to mine my personal life for content while pretending you were just being friendly and curious. The room felt suffocating, the tension nearly tangible. Drew struggled to regain control, her hands shaking as she reached for her water glass. I understand you're upset. I want to make this right, Drew whispered, her voice fragile. I genuinely had no idea about any of those producer calls. I would never ambush a guest, especially not about something as personal as their marriage. Joanna stood abruptly, her chair scraping harshly against the floor. You know what, Drew? Maybe you're telling the truth. Maybe you don't know what your own team is doing in your name. But that doesn't make this any less of a betrayal of trust. Hands planted firmly on her hips, she towered over Drew, radiating an intensity that made the entire studio hold its breath. Years of carefully cultivated Southern hospitality were gone. In its place was raw, unfiltered anger. You want to know the real problem here, Drew? Joanna continued, her voice rising. It's not just your producers. It's this entire culture of fake intimacy you've all created. Daytime television lulls people into feeling comfortable and safe, and then exploits that trust to extract the most vulnerable parts of their lives for entertainment. Drew remained seated, flushed with embarrassment and confusion. Joanna, please, can we just step back? I think there's been a massive misunderstanding. Me? A misunderstanding? Joanna's voice cracked with disbelief. Drew, your head producer literally told my publicist that you wanted me to open up about the challenges in my marriage because, quote, viewers connect with vulnerability and it would be great for my book sales. Does that sound like a misunderstanding to you? The audience was mesmerized. Some recorded on their phones, others covered their mouths in shock. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression of an unprecedented meltdown. Drew's eyes filled with tears. I am so sorry, Joanna. I had no idea any of that was said to your team. That goes against everything I believe as an interviewer and as a person. I would never exploit someone's personal struggles for ratings. Joanna's voice, cold and unwavering. Cut through the room, but that's exactly what you're doing right now. Joanna shot back immediately, her voice sharp and unwavering. Even as you're apologizing, you're still filming this. You're going to use every second of my breakdown for content. Edit it with dramatic music and flashy graphics, and turn my genuine hurt into clickbait. Drew's eyes darted desperately toward her producers off camera, silently pleading for guidance or rescue. None came. She turned back to Joanna, tears now streaming freely down her face. What do you want me to do? Stop filming. End the interview. I'll do whatever you need me to do to make this right. Joanna paused, considering the offer, then shook her head slowly. No, Drew. Let's keep rolling. Let's give your audience exactly what they came for. You want vulnerability. You want to see behind the perfectly curated facade. Here it is. She sat back down, perching on the edge of her chair like a coiled spring, ready to strike again. Do you have any idea what it's like to build something beautiful with someone you love, only to have strangers constantly trying to tear it apart for their own amusement? Do you know what it feels like to have people analyze every photo, every public appearance, looking for cracks in your foundation? Drew dabbed at her eyes with a tissue quickly handed to her by a team member. I can only imagine how difficult that must be. No, you can't, Joanna interrupted, her tone cutting. Because you've built a career out of being open about your struggles. You've monetized your divorces, your mental health journey, your parenting challenges. You've turned your pain into profit, so you think everyone else should do the same. The accusation hung in the air like a physical blow. Drew recoiled, taken aback. That's not fair, Joanna. I share my experiences because I think it helps people feel less alone in their struggles. And that's your choice, Joanna said. Her voice still sharp, but slightly moderated. But it doesn't give you the right to pressure others to do the same. Not everyone wants to live their lives as an open book for public consumption. Drew nodded slowly, finally seeming to grasp the depth of Joanna's frustration. You're absolutely right, and I'm genuinely sorry my team put you in this position, Drew admitted, her voice quiet but sincere. This conversation should have been about your book, your design philosophy, your creative process, your marriage or personal life. Joanna leaned forward, her intensity unwavering. But it's not just your team, Drew. This is systemic. This is how the entire industry operates. You book guests under the pretense of promoting their work. But what you really want are their secrets, their vulnerabilities, their private moments of doubt and struggle. The studio audience sat in rapt silence, caught in what had shifted from an interview to a searing critique of celebrity culture and media ethics. Drew glanced around the room, suddenly seeing her show and the industry she inhabited through Joanna's eyes. I never thought about it that way, she admitted quietly. I've always tried to create a space where people feel comfortable sharing. But I'd never considered that creating that space might feel like pressure to some guests. Asterisk it does, Joanna said firmly. And when they don't share, when they try to maintain their boundaries, they get labeled as difficult, fake, or calculating. There's no winning, Drew exhaled shakily. So, how do we fix this? How do we do better? Joanna studied her for a long moment, gauging whether the question was sincere or performative. You start by having this conversation with your producers before your guests arrive, not after you've already traumatized them on live television. The words hit hard. Drew flinched. That's fair. That's completely fair. Is it though? Joanna asked, her voice sharpening again. I'm sitting here educating you about basic human decency. And you're going to get praised for being open to feedback and growth. Meanwhile, I'm going to be labeled the difficult guest who had a meltdown on your show. Drew opened her mouth to respond, but Joanna held up a hand. Don't tell me that won't happen because we both know it will. The headlines are already forming in the producers. Mine's Joanna Gaines loses it on Drew Barrymore's show. Magnolia founder's shocking outburst. Design queen's dramatic breakdown. Her prediction hung in the air, chillingly accurate, as everyone in the studio realized she was right. Asterisk, so. What happens now? Drew asked quietly. Joanna rose again, but this time her movements were measured, deliberate, rather than explosive. I'm going to walk off your set with whatever dignity I have left. And you're going to air this interview exactly as it happened, without dramatic editing or manipulative music, because that is the ethical thing to do. Drew nodded solemnly. I give you my word that we'll treat this footage with respect. Joanna gathered her purse and moved toward the exit, pausing to turn back for one final, electrifying look. The studio froze. The tension in that pause was more intense than most people experience in a lifetime. You know what, Drew? Joanna said, her voice eerily calm after the storm. I actually feel sorry for you. Drew's face contorted in confusion and hurt. What do you mean? Joanna's tone took on a strange, maternal quality, cutting deeper than her earlier anger. You've been so conditioned by this industry to believe intimacy equals entertainment that you probably genuinely don't understand why what happened here today was wrong. You sit in that chair every day, smiling, laughing, crying with your guests. Thinking it sets you apart from other hosts mining people's lives, but the end result is exactly the same. Drew wiped her eyes again, struggling to maintain composure as Joanna's words reverberated through the silent studio. Asterisk, I really do care about my guests. Joanna. I'm not just pretending to connect with people, Drew said, her voice breaking. I believe you, Joanna replied, and for a fleeting moment, Drew seemed relieved. But Joanna's next words cut even deeper. That almost makes it worse, doesn't it? Because your genuine care becomes part of the manipulation. People trust you because they can see you empathize with them. And then that trust becomes the very thing that makes them vulnerable to exploitation. The audience watched, riveted, witnessing what felt unprecedented in daytime television, a complete deconstruction of the format in real time. Drew looked around helplessly, as if hoping for anyone to throw her a lifeline. So what are you saying? That I should quit my job? That I should stop trying to connect with people? She asked, voice trembling. I'm saying you should ask yourself whether the connection you're creating is actually helping your guests or just boosting your ratings. Joanna answered without hesitation. From where I'm sitting, it looks like you've built a career on making people feel safe enough to expose themselves on television. And then you profit from that exposure while they go home and deal with the consequences. Asterisk Drew was openly sobbing now. And normally, Joanna might have softened her approach or offered comfort. But she remained rooted, relentless. The worst part, she continued, is that you've convinced yourself you're doing good work. You think that by sharing your struggles and encouraging others to do the same, you're helping people. But you're not, Drew. You're teaching them that their pain is only valuable if it can be packaged and sold. That's not what I'm trying to do, Drew protested through her tears. But it is what you're doing, Joanna said firmly. Every time you praise a guest for sharing something deeply personal, you reinforce the idea that vulnerability is a performance. Every time you thank someone for opening up about trauma, you commodify their pain. The studio fell silent. Even crew members who had been moving quietly earlier stopped to listen. Asterisk, I came on your show to talk about design. About creating beautiful spaces that nurture families and communities, Joanna said, her voice strengthening. I came to share something I've spent years perfecting, something that brings joy to people's lives. But instead, your team wanted to turn my marriage into a storyline. Drew looked up, red-eyed. I'm so sorry, Joanna. I'm so incredibly sorry. Your apology doesn't change anything, Joanna said coldly. This isn't about you personally, Drew. It's about a system. You're part of a system that treats private lives like content to be consumed. And your apology, as sincere as it may be, doesn't protect the next guest who walks onto this set. Drew nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of Joanna's words. What can I do? How can I change this? She asked. Joanna studied her, assessing whether she was capable of real change. Start by having a serious conversation with your producers about what kinds of questions and storylines are acceptable. Stop rewarding guests for sharing trauma as if their pain is a gift to your audience. Acknowledge that some conversations are more important than good television. Some things should happen in private with friends, family, or therapists, not in front of cameras for strangers' entertainment. Drew nodded vigorously, hanging on every word. Yes, absolutely. I hear you, and I want to do better. Do you, though? Joanna asked skeptically. Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear so the interview can end on a positive note? Even now, in the middle of this confrontation, you're still performing. You're still thinking about how this looks to your audience. The accusations struck like a physical blow, and Drew recoiled. I don't know how to turn it off, she whispered. I don't know how to just be a person instead of a host. Joanna's expression softened slightly. That's the saddest thing you've said all day. Drew looked at her with a mix of hope and desperation. Will you help me figure out how to do better? Joanna shook her head slowly. That's not my job, Drew. I'm not your life coach or therapist. I came on your show to promote a book and instead got ambushed about my personal life. Fixing your approach is something you need to do yourself. Asterisk with that, Joanna turned toward the exit. Just before leaving the set, she paused one last time. For what it's worth, Drew, I hope you figure it out. You have a platform that could genuinely help people if used differently. But right now, you're just another person profiting from other people's pain. That's not helping anyone. The studio remained frozen as Joanna walked off, leaving Drew alone, tears still streaming. The cameras rolled, capturing the stunned audience, the empty chair, and the raw aftermath of what had just unfolded. This confrontation didn't just challenge Drew Barrymore. It challenged an entire industry and how it treats private lives as public entertainment. Joanna Gaines, the woman who built an empire on kindness and hospitality, had delivered one of the most brutal takedowns ever witnessed on live television. Asterisk.